get this show on the road here. Welcome everyone to the annual induction ceremony for the Elma Auto Racing Hall of Fame. I'm Andrew Kunis. It's my pleasure and honor to host this event again. And we'll have our dessert auction here at about 5:30. But first, we're going to conclude something that we started 10 years ago. Our guest speaker from that night is going to continue his speech from that evening 10 years ago. He's one of our inductees tonight here. Everyone will please give a round of applause for the legendary Jerry Day.
Hold it up to your face, Jerry, and you're good.
Yeah, it's on. Nope, it's on.
Hi. Does it work? Hello, can you hear me? Okay, good. I think legendary means I say no. But anyway, I'm going to start with this first one. Andrew, turn it up. Good.
Nice shot.
There you go. Covered.
This fellow here is our leader and responsible him as the board director of this whole team. And I just wanted to thank them for all the work that they did, obviously. And I'm pretty proud that he had one of my race cars. As a matter of fact, it was the last race car I ever built in 1985. So thank you, Rick, and the board of directors and their avails involved for doing this thing. Can we give them a big hand, please? Okay, that's now. This is the past. When I was shortly after World War II, I was 10 years old, and my family gathered us all up and we moved to Medford, Oregon. So while I was there, I got a paper out, and I was going to the airport all the time. I just love airplanes. And I saw this 32 Ford Coupe parked there at this hangar with a number on it. Rosenberg Air Service. He was a crop duster. And I asked him about that car, and he said, oh, this is something we race on the weekends up behind the Pear Orchard here. You want to come and see it sometime? Well, I sure did. And when I got home, I told my mother, I was 10 then, you know, when I grow up, Mom, I want to be a race car driver. And she patted me on the head and said, sure, son. Well, going forward 10 years later, I was 20 years old. I just got home from serving a little time with Uncle Sam's United States Air Force as a mechanic, keeping the airplanes flying. And I was going to go racing. So I grabbed a partner, and we went down to SeaTac Speedway, trying to buy a race car. We didn't have much money. So this car showed up. Some people I knew had it fixed up for a powder puff car for one of the guy's wives. And she was known to take a little nip or two once in a while. And she did just that, I think. But anyway, she crashed the car and drove it into the big potting hills gate up there. So Gordy down at one end of the track, and I'm at that end. We're trying to find a car, maybe find. We don't have money to buy one that's very good. But I asked them if they wanted to sell it. Jack Benson was his name. If you're old enough, you might know him. And Harold Lonsdale was his driver. And so I offered them $50 for it. And they said, okay, you can have it. Well, it was front end was bent a little bit, radiator was leaking, but it was pretty reasonable. So I went down and told Gordy about it. give me your $25, and he did. I went back and had another look at it, and I said to Jack, I said, this thing actually looks a little worse than I thought. The axles are bad, the radiator's shot, who knows what else. About 35. And he said, well, okay. So I gave him the $35. And that's a good way to start racing, because I made $15 and never turned a lap yet. So, next. Okay. This is the first car I ever built. I sold that 44 coupe for scrap. And I ran across this car at West Seattle that caught the fire. It was a show car at the time. And I bought it with this engine for $75. And I had some welding experience already, so I gutted the thing and did all the things you do to them. Cut the doors down, built the bumpers and the bars. We towed them on the ground in those days. You can see the front bumper has 2 brackets on it. And leaning against the wall back there is a Ford wishbone that used to hold the front end straight. It's got a trailer hitch on one end and the other brackets on there, and that's how we towed those cars, even with the race tires on them. So, that car was a good B main car. I had run the A main too, but it wasn't a real fast car, but it was a good education, way to learn to race. So, moving on to the next car. That's the same one. It's got a Tahitian, oh, that's right, leave it there. It had a Tahitian red paint job on it. This car I started building because they went to modifies at SeaTac. And I was probably 2/3 done with it. And my buddy Steve Irish just had to have it, so I sold it to him. They finished it. And he drove it for a while until he got burned really bad. Cleaning parts one night out in his garage with his dad. They had like a oil drain tank full of solvent gasoline. And his dad went in and said, you better close up and come on in. And as he was picking that up to put it on a shelf, he hit the shelf and it spilled on him. And he got up to go out and hit the light switch and whoop, went up in flames. And he was burned pretty bad. Third degree pains on 70% of his body. It's the worst burn case that ever lived. So he drove it a few times before he got burned. Then Bob and Cleese drove it. They won a ton of races with that thing. Let's go to the next one. Now we're moving along. In the old days, the old timers owned the sprint cars, and they cost a lot of money, and they hired the youngsters to drive them. Well, this car belonged to a guy named Glenn Nichols. It was a track roadster converted to a sprint car, had an Oldsmobile engine in it, and it was a middle of the pack car. One night he came down out of the grandstands, like a scout, baseball and stuff, and asked me, he said, say, son, he said, you look pretty good out there. You ever think about driving a sprint car? I said, well, sir, only when I'm awake or sleeping. He thought, that fills the bill. Would you come out to my place and see how you fit in it? I said, okay, for sure. So I went out there and I got in the car and I said, I fit perfect. I did fit pretty good. And he said, okay, you've got the ride. So off we go in that thing. It wasn't real fast, but it was a sprint car. One of the first times I ran at Green Speedway, right after they built that 5/8 mile track. And That's a pretty big racetrack and pretty scary for a rookie driver. What you would call an older race car. A friend of mine started racing at the same time, Ray Oban, and he was driving a Ranger. We went out and hot lapped when we came in, and I talked to Ray. I said, "What do you think?" He says, "Well, it's the only racetrack I've ever been on where I had time to pray going down the straightaway." Next picture. Oh, well, there's that same car. After I practically destroyed it at once again at Evergreen. I was racing, I was running pretty good. I was getting ready to pass one of the Rangers, and the driver got hit in the eye with a rock. And as I was outside of him, it knocked him out, and he turned straight, ran over me, left tire tracks on my helmet. I got upside down, a couple of barrel rolls, and finally wound up on a little racetrack. And the front end was completely out of the car. The steering mounts were all tore off from where I was hanging on. And so I was lucky my career kept going after that. We got the car fixed and I raced it some more. I was starting to build my roadster about this time too. Next picture. Now that's a car that some fellas up north owned. And Ray Orr was driving it, and he was driving it on the dirt, and he didn't want to run asphalt, so I drove it on the asphalt for him a few times, and I told him I want to learn how to run the dirt. So they said, well, we'll ask Ray. They did. He said, well, okay, give him 3 weeks to get the A main, and if he doesn't make that, then we'll regroup. Well, I went out and hot lapped the thing and had no idea what I was doing. And I come in and went out for qualifying. When I came back from that, those guys they were all laughing. Jimmy Collier, Larry Foss, and with the engine. And I said, well, if you guys think it's so damn easy, why don't you get in and go try it yourself? We're not laughing because you did bad, Jerry. We're laughing because you just broke the track record. You got the ride. So that was a pretty good deal. Next. Here's another car that Doug James built this car. Bert Flake bought it for me to drive when he was pitting on my Roadster. And that's why it's got 76 Junior on it. Because my number has always been 76. So we raced that for a couple of years. This happened to be one of the nights I won, and so I got a beer to celebrate. He towed all the way from Lakewood every weekend, and met Sylvia and I down in Renton at Sunset Auto Sales, and we'd hustle up to the racetrack, and we're usually late, and we were waiting for time trials, and we'd make it just in time, because it's just a long way up there. That's when they race on Friday night. So, after we did that for a while, I went to the clubs and tried to get them to change to Saturday. And after going to a couple of meetings with Skagit and there, they decided it was a good idea, and they did change, and that's how we got going Saturday night in Skagit and Friday in Sky Valley. Next. And speaking of the Roadster, that's a pretty interesting car. That's the first real car I ever built. And I didn't have a clue how to build one. I hadn't even ever really looked at one up close. I helped Levy Jones. I had a fiberglass business at the time. I helped him build a body for his Roadster that he bought from Curtis. There's a last one off the jig. It was built for a Chevrolet. It was an Indy car, but Levy didn't care. This is before we ever started making parts. He had a cabinet shop. So I would go down to his place in Puyallup, and we built the wood bucks, which was handy for a little wood shop, and chicken wire and plaster, and made all the all the plugs, which is what it's called before you make a mold off the plug. And that's the body that came out of it. That body's on about a dozen cars by now. That was in 19 way early. I'll think about it later. So that was the first body on it. And then the latest body was the Ranger Roadster that I just completed a few years ago. Next. That's a picture of the Roadster up on Skagit Speedway on the dirt. I'd never tried that car on dirt before, but this was an open cop race, and I was told that Roadsters don't work on the dirt, but I thought I would try it. So I borrowed some tires from David Kramer, some Firestone R1s for the back and some pretty big implement tires for the front that looked like ribs. And we went up there and when all was said and done after qualifying, I had fast time. And I have no idea how I did that. As a matter of fact, Jeff Gordon was there. He was the California champion. He came and asked me, he said, how'd you do that, Jerry? I said, I really don't know. And Dave was second quick. And I wanted to get a crash during the main event, so it started to push real bad because the track came in. I didn't have any stagger. And I got T-boned by a modified. So what do we got next? Oh, that's me. I was taking that Speedway. The pits there were like a gravel pit. I mean, rocks and mud. But anyway, it's kind of a cool show. I mean, that's what real open wheel racing was all about. A pair of goggles and a handkerchief and dirty faces, let it rip. It's got the fuel pump on the side where you pump the fuel pressure up to get it started. In my case, I was running gasoline instead of alcohol. And so I'd get it running, and then I had the fuel pump, the stock fuel pump, rather than have it pumping gas, I had to pump an air back to the fuel tank, so I had pressure on the fuel. And that's what supplied it to the carburetors. Had a Chevrolet dry power on it, Rochester carburetors. It was a pretty fast car. I finished it in 67 and raced it that year, 68. And in 69, I won the championships with it for WRA. Next. Well, this always makes me mad when I see this picture. This is the Saturday night at the Daffodil Cup up in Victoria. The first night, I won the race, and one of the all-time big guns come over and told me that I was a stroker, and I started up front, and don't plan on doing the same thing tomorrow. Well, of course, I had planned on doing the same thing tomorrow, until he took care of his promise and dumped me in front of another car who tore the nose off the car. So I didn't get to win that second night. And he was on my list of enemies ever since. I have, oh, okay, here, next.
All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us here for the 2026 Elma Auto Racing Hall of Fame induction ceremony. My name is Andrew Kunis. It is my privilege and honor to be asked to do this again here. I've done all these since 2017, and this has been an awful lot of fun each year. You're talking with each of the inductees or their representing family members here, learning a lot of racing history, and there's a lot of history and knowledge and good stories present in the room here, and looking forward to hearing some stuff here this evening and telling you some good stuff. First, I want to introduce our board. People help put this together for the Elma Auto Racing Hall of Fame. First, we got Mr. Jeff Farnham over here. You saw her at the front desk during the afternoon here, Wendy Leedy. She does a lot of accounting here and does a lot of other stuff here. She makes a lot of stuff happen. Cindy Badgett. He tried making the sound system work here, but we'll forgive him. He does a lot of other great stuff for us as well. Randy Badgett. Bruce Waters, where you at? Bruce Waters? He's somewhere. Go ahead and round of applause for him as well. Matt Bell. And a pair of gentlemen who have been part of this since the beginning in 2009. First, Glenn Walker. And the head honcho, the guy who's made everything happen over the years. You know, he deserves a big round of applause, Mr. Rick Leedy. Last several years we were at the fairgrounds in Elma, but new location for us this year. We want to thank the McCleary Veterans of Foreign Wars for hosting us this year. How about a round of applause for them? And since we're in this place there, if you are a veteran, I ask you please rise. Do we have any veterans present? All of our veterans were present. Yeah, you're already here. We'll get you later. And since we are here, there's a request was made here. Since we were at the VFW here, those who are willing and able, please stand, and we will do the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. There are a number of them present here. The list is too long to name here, but special welcome to these folks. If you are an Elma Hall of Famer and you're present here tonight, please rise. And also, if you're one of these folks, please rise and step forward. If you're a track champion this year, as I name you off at Grace Harbor Raceway, in the 360 sprint cars, Destry Miller. Winner sprint cars, Dan Miller. Our champion was Tyson Blood. Champion Braden Brookshire. Focus Midget track champion was Alex Peck. Superstock champion was Austin Kerrigan. And our Hornet champion was Landon Pruitt. We didn't do this last year because we were in a little bit of a time crunch. But an idea I got from the Western Auto Racing Promoters Association meetings that have been held in Portland every year in November. A lot behind the scenes work happens there. But Tom Glithrow emceed much of the proceedings. Warp reads off a list of individuals who had passed away during the prior year, and then he invites the room to speak the name of anyone else who had passed since the prior year's warp, if they were by chance missed here. So we had a number of people who passed away since last March, since last year's ceremony here. People who are no longer with us, including a handful of our Elma Auto Racing Hall of Fame inductees. 2010 inductee Doug Goebel. He
He was a three-time Superstock champion in 1978, 1983, 1984. 2011 inductee, Ray Seaman. He was a longtime pit boss and a former racer. And as I mentioned, he was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2011 and received one of the special awards as well. 2012 inductee, Harry Crowell, all-time car owner, track sponsor, and car owner. His time dating back to the 1950s. And just last month, we lost our 2024 inductee, the Right Honorable Ed Williams, one of my mentors. He was an announcer, a writer, promoter, sponsor, historian. He done just about everything. We sadly lost Ed Williams back in February. Some other folks here passed away recently. Last spring, a friend of mine, friend of many people in this room here, Annette Claffey, was a long-time super fan, really, of dirt track racing and racing in general around the Pacific Northwest there, and she was a big time fan of Grays Harbor Raceway, and her loss stung quite a few of us. Other individuals here from just racing at large, Leroy Van Connet, West Coast Super Modified Sprint Car legend here, 8 NARC championships, former Gold Cup winner. Kylie Johnson, dwarf car racer, just started. She had just started a career in law enforcement down in California. There, she was likely going to be coming up here to race in a dwarf car there, but sadly she passed away in an unrelated accident back in September. Her loss shook the dwarf car community on the West Coast. Micro sprint racer who was from California, I believe, but who was a regular presence at the Clay Cup at Deming Speedway every year. Maddox Salmon passed away a few months back. I was also told by Mike Evans that we lost other individuals, including Vicky Zimmerman, Jim Hard, and Lauren Gay. And then just last week here, I had to add a name to this here. Many of you heard about the tragic accident at the World Outlaws race in Texas there, involving the safety crew there. One of their longtime safety officials, Billy Hurt, lost his life. And you think about the racers, they're putting their lives on the line here, and sometimes you forget about the people who work to make them safe, our safety workers here. A lot of them, whether they've been a long time or a short period of time there, they're risking their safety as well for our racers, staff, and fans. And that's why whenever I announce a race, I'm the announcer for a race, I do opening ceremonies, and I always make it a point to point out our safety workers and ask for a round of applause for those safety workers here, because we cannot go racing without those people here. And I'm sure there's a couple people in this room who have been safety workers in one role or another here. And at this time, I'd like to ask for a round of applause for our safety workers here and elsewhere. Time for the introductions here. One quick mention here. It's never too late or early to nominate someone. There are forms available here. If you want to nominate someone you think's been forgotten, nominate them for the class of 2027. You can take the form home with you. After I've introduced all 6 here, don't leave yet here, because we'll bring up Mr. Leedy. And we have the Spoon and Brownfield Awards. And I saw there's a third envelope here. We have a third award to give away this evening as well. So don't take off quite yet there, because we'll have the awards to hand out. So here we go. First inductee this evening is sadly no longer with us, but he had a long involvement in racing at the fairgrounds in Elma. He had multiple roles in his time in the sport, but one thing that everyone agreed on about him was that he put his whole heart into whatever role he had at the track. For about 30 years, he owned Don's Window and Carpet Cleaning, and for many years, his business sponsored cars racing at the Elma Fairgrounds, including that of future Elma Hall of Famer Glenn Walker. He then thought it was a good idea to get into a car himself, In the late 1960s, he began a short career as a racer, competing in the old jalopies on that old half-mile dirt oval at the Elma Fairgrounds. His number 68 machine, sliding its way around the track, was a regular sight. While driving his own car, he still helped other racers out as he continued sponsoring cars. He also tried to keep his own family involved in some way. He occasionally tried to sneak his young son David into the pit area, but the youngster usually got caught by track workers and was escorted out. Eventually, he was done at Elma as an active competitor, but his involvement in sport did not end there. He traded his fire suit and helmet for an official's jacket and a set of flags. He took on one of the most important jobs at the racetrack, and one that could be considered one of the most thankless, the chief flagman. As he did before, he put his whole heart into the job. Things changed at the Grace Harbor County Fairgrounds, and the old half-mile was removed by 1980, and the new 3/10 track was built in its place by 1981. He hung around and continued his job as head flagman, staying engaged with race teams and fellow officials. He continued in this role for several years before deciding to step away and let the next generation take over. Throughout it all, he was an engaged member of the Elma racing community and often spent time post-race consuming a well-earned adult beverage with his friends. In his time with the Evergreen Auto Racing Association, he was described as one of the best members the club ever had, as he was at every work party or club function. He also lent his own equipment to help out at the track, including once bringing in a tractor to help install corner lights on the old track. He was always there for everyone. From his time as a business owner and sponsor, to his time behind the wheel of a race car, to his time on the flag stand, he was known for always taking time for racers and fans. His contributions sometimes went unnoticed, but were felt by many. Please join me in welcoming to the Elma Auto Racing Hall of Fame, Joe Crawford. Unfortunately, talking with train messengers with his son David, and David could not be here and did not get a chance to ask, but do we have any members of the Crawford family here by chance? Well, we will reach out to them here and see if we can get everything to them there, but congratulations to Joe Crawford. One thing I realized I just forgot. I mentioned everyone who had passed away, and I was supposed to do this before going to the nominees here. So it's a little bit out of order here, so my mistake on that. I mentioned everyone on my list here. So give everyone the opportunity here. Anyone else who have passed away since last March, whether they were part of racing here in Elma or in racing in general around the Northwest here, I invite you, if you know of anyone, to speak that individual's name.
Sean Wood Jr.
Anyone else? Thank you very much, Ed. And my apologies there, I forgot to do that there to open up to the floor. Thanks for your patience, everyone. Our next inductee this evening is another one who's no longer with us, but he had a large presence in the history of Grace Harbor Raceway here, including recently. He always wanted to race, and he was fearless when he did race. He wanted to win, but in the end, he was at any racetrack for one purpose, and that was to have fun. In his youth, and as an adult with a family, rarely was there a Saturday night when he wasn't at a race, especially in Elma. He first ran motocross, but then started hanging out in Elma more, and eventually got to spend a lot of time with the likes of Jim Luellen. Okay. I knew I was going to mispronounce that these ones. I apologize there. And also Don Warren. Eventually, he got his own car to race, running the old bomber class at the Elma National Raceway for a time. And his car was a regular sight at the Grace Harbor County Fairgrounds. Later on, however, a car crash left the torn retina in an eye, and that led him to hang up the helmet and fire suit. His love and passion for racing didn't go away then, nor did his desire to be involved in some way. After his driving days were over, he joined the staff at the Speedway and held many different positions as an official over the years. For a time, he was a main tech official, a job that could be considered thankless as it involved working to keep the drivers and race teams honest, and having to make the tough decision to disqualify someone when their car was found to be illegal. For a time, he worked as a flagman, another position that could be considered thankless, as he was in control of the flags and lights and trying to keep the race and racers safe. Later in his time at Grace Harbor Raceway, he was promoted to the role of competition director. Even more thankless of a job, as he conducted pit meetings, observed and controlled the races from the tower, and had the uncomfortable job of making calls in tough situations. His wife Cindy says that while there were for sure some not fun situations at the track, he never really butted heads with the racers that often, first as a racer himself and then as an official. And he generally enjoyed working with the racers as an official in efforts to keep things smooth and provide as good a product as possible for the fans. Saturdays were big for his family, and he wanted to get them involved when possible. A few times he was able to get permission for his young daughter to be a trophy presenter on the front stretch. In the end, he wanted to laugh and joke with people, have a good time at the track, and at the end of the night, crack open a cold one. Tonight, we cracked open a cold one for him. With his wife Cindy accepting on his behalf, please join me in welcoming to the Elma Auto Racing Hall of Fame, Steve Luellen. Cindy, would you like to say anything?
I just want to say it's a very big honor that I know Steve's here, and this was his element, and I know he's going to be very proud. And I am also, and so is his family and friends. Thanks.
And congrats to the Luellen family, well deserved. Our next inductee this evening, he's been a race fan his entire life, going to the races at Skagit Speedway and Sky Valley Speedway as a kid, and also able to see the old Ascot Speedway when visiting grandparents in California. As an adult, he always wanted to go racing. Then, when the time came, he got a little help from his mother. Gave him some money to go find a race car to buy. An uncle and another gentleman named Mike Evans got wind and helped him to fund a sportsman sprint car out of Canada. In 2001, at 30 years old, he ran the sportsman sprint division at Skagit Speedway, perhaps as the oldest rookie there. It was a successful year as he picked up a win at the midseason championship and finished third in the point standings, earning Rookie of the Year honors, also being voted Sportsman of the Year. That year in the Sporty would be his only one, as he sold the car to Galen Stewart, who ironically would win the track championship at Skagit Speedway the next year. Our inductee got into 360 sprint cars. He was originally going to run Skagit, but a conversation with Fred Brownfield had him trying out Grace Harbor Raceway as their 2002 season approached. And at the opener, he found the track to his liking and chose to regularly race there, despite living north of Seattle. He set the qualifying track record that would be the last on the 3/10 mile track before its reconfiguration prior to the 2004 season. And having that last record on the 3/10 mile track, he was given a plaque for it by Fred Brownfield. He eventually won his first 360 sprint car race, coming without the wings at a 2005 race at Madras Speedway in Central Oregon. After 2006, he put that 360 car away and focused on the recently created Focus Midget class. He ran those Focus Midgets for the next few years, winning events in both Oregon and Washington. His main rival in the midgets was the future Elma Hall of Famer, Dan West Jr. The two were always racing around each other, with West winning the Elma track title in 2007 and her inductee in 2008. He also won at the popular fair races at the Central Washington State Fair and in Yakima. Also in 2008, he was approached by John Simmons to to drive his 360 sprint car and agreed to return to sprint car racing also, running both winged and non-winged, and picking up a Northwest Wingless Tour victory at Elma in 2010. When he said it was one of his best memories in the sprint car, as it was a dominating performance all night for him. A serious crash at Elma in the Focus Midget that same year ended his time in the midgets, but after recovering from his injuries, he continued to race the sprint car for a few more seasons before retiring as a competitor following the 2013 season. In winged sprint cars, wingless sprint cars, and Focus Midgets, he won races in both Washington and Oregon in all three divisions, perhaps one of only a few drivers to accomplish that feat, picking up by his estimation, around a dozen total victories during his time racing. He raced for several years, taking pride in fielding good cars. He also tried to do his best to be a good sportsman and just enjoy everything. He's still a frequent presence at the races, including showing his support at these induction ceremonies, and tonight it's his turn to be honored. Please join me in welcoming to the Elma Auto Racing Hall of Fame, Jeff Bell.
Hello, and thanks everyone for being here tonight. I'd first like to thank everyone involved with the Elma Auto Racing Hall of Fame for everything you do for Northwest racing history, especially here in Elma. I am truly honored to be selected. My racing career didn't start out like most. I'd never raced anything in my life, not even a bicycle. But I've always been a huge fan of sprint car racing, and growing up I watched races at Sky Valley, Skagit, and Elma. I also watched races in California at Ascot and Santa Maria. At the end of 2000, my mom received a settlement from an auto accident and decided to give my sisters and I some money. She told me that she wanted me to buy a sprint car. I thought she was crazy. But after thinking about it, and with the strange coincidence that my uncle, Rick Anthony, and his buddy, Mike Evans, had found a complete car for sale in my price range, I went ahead and bought it. I raced my rookie season at Skagit in the Sportsman Division, finished third in points, earning Rookie of the Year. I also won the mid-season championship feature that year. I didn't go in with big expectations, but afterwards I remember thinking, wow, not bad for a 30-year-old rookie. In 2002, I bought a 360 car and I started the season at Skagit. Back then, they usually started racing a few weeks before Elma. A couple weeks into the season, the 360s weren't running at Skagit. And I got a call from Fred Brownfield. I'm still not sure how he got my number, but he was a pretty resourceful guy.
It's on the wall in the bathroom.
He asked if I was planning to come down and run Elma that Saturday. I told him I hadn't even thought about it and wasn't sure, but he was pretty convincing and really wanted me to come down and run, so I did. We ended up finishing in the top 5 that night. Met a lot of great people, had a lot of fun. That night really started my relationship with Auto Raceway at Elma. And from that point on, it pretty much became my home track. Although I did race some at Skagit, Yakima, and a few tracks in Oregon, I raced from 2001 until 2013 in several different classes. I won some races, I even won a championship. But the best part of racing for me was the people I met, especially the fans. Over the years, I made some great friendships with people like Jay Cole and his group, Brady Bacon, Glenn Borden Jr., John Tharp, J.J. Hickle, Dan West Jr., Travis Brarity, the Evans Gang, Susie and the Koski family, and the Stern family, just to name a few. There are also a few people I really need to thank who helped me along the way. After I bought the original car, it just sat in my garage. It because I had no clue what anything was or how it worked. Mike Evans came over many nights after work and helped me get it ready and showed me the basics. Thanks, Mike. Ben Curtis and Shauna Wilski from Rocket Chassis really took me under their wing and helped me show the ropes. They were good about selling me parts I needed and discouraging me from buying things I didn't need or couldn't afford. I met John Dickinson years before I started racing at the Outlaw shows in Elma. Once I started racing, I bought all my wings from John and even repaired quite a few for me. Vern Rangan was also instrumental after my big midget accident in 2010. From a chassis to motor parts and everything in between, Vern helped me get a sprint car put together so I could go racing again. Tim Levine is my neighbor, and I was lucky to have him so close. He is a master craftsman and fabricator. He helped me with just about everything from welding to motor stuff. Lastly, I want to thank my family. My mom, my dad, my daughter Megan, my son Cameron, for putting up with me. All the late nights in the shop, all the nights at the track, the traveling, the hotels. As many people in this room know, racing isn't just a sport, it's a lifestyle. I didn't have a huge crew over the years, but guys like Reed, James, Pete, and Matt helped me a lot. Without them, I couldn't have done it. But the most important person in my racing career was my dad. He wasn't exactly an ace crew chief, and sometimes couldn't tell if the car was tight or loose. But he was one of those guys that could figure out anything. He was a master at running brake lines, plumbing, wiring, and straightening bent parts. After he retired, he even became my parts runner. I'd send him all over the place, picking up whatever we needed to get to the track for the next race. He was always joking around with everyone and kept the mood positive, especially when I wasn't so positive. In 2003, I decided to run the entire NST tour. A few days before Speed Week, one of our crew members backed out. I thought we might have to cancel it, but Dad said, the two of us could handle it. And we did. It wasn't an easy week. We had everything from running out of fuel in the truck on I-5 to having our hotel room taken away from us, along with a few track incidents. But somehow, we made it through the week. Didn't kill each other, and ran all the races. I'll finish with one last story that some of you guys have probably already heard. But the first night we came down here to race in Elma, I got to the track early like usual. I bought pit passes and asked where the sprint cars parked. The guy pointed to the row and said, you can park on the left or you can park on the right. So I pulled into the first stall on the left side. We unloaded the car. The guy started unstrapping the quad and toolboxes. And about that time, John Dickinson walked over. He said, hey, that's normally where the Whitney's cars park. So I told the guys, like, hey, hold up, we might be moving. A little while later, here comes Billy St. Paul. Bright yellow Whitney's hauler. He looks at where I'm parked, he hits the gas, and whips right into the stall next to us. Before he even gets out of the truck, I can hear him swearing and calling me every name in the book. He jumps out, he starts throwing some stuff around. I can tell he's pretty mad. The guys asked me, are we moving? I smiled, I said, oh, hell no. The best part was the next week, we come back to the track, I pull into the pits and there's Slim, sitting in a lawn chair, in that first spot. It didn't matter to me. We always parked on the other side anyways. Years later, I became good friends with Billy. We traveled to many races together, went shrimping, and we drank a lot of beer. I really miss that guy. Thanks, everyone. I really appreciate the honor and hope you all have a good night.
Our next inductee. Tonight is bittersweet for him and the family, as he had the special honor of joining his late father, Perry, as an inductee into the Elma Auto Racing Hall of Fame. This inductee was born into racing. His father, grandfather, and granduncle were all heavily involved in the sport. All racing or sponsoring cars out of the auto repair shop that they had for many years. The shop dating back to 1922. Dad raced for a time. He was also a car owner with the likes of Jerry McLeese and Earl Fritz, among the drivers piloting his cars. As our inductee grew up, he decided he wanted in. He first got involved up in crew for his brother-in-law, but that wasn't enough as he wanted to get behind the wheel of a race car himself. First doing so around 1987 when he got a street stock. He admits it was quite the big learning curve at first, as he had more than one up-close and personal meeting with that old outside guardrail for 3/10 miles. But he had a lot of help, including from his family and friends, at the shop at home and at the track. He was surprised with the runner-up finish of the point standings that season, missing out by just 6 points to Jim Gwynn Sr. Did I pronounce that last name? I got it. I always try to get that one there. He eventually tried a super stock and a modified, and even tried out driving a sprint car, but backed out of racing those, believing he just did not belong there. He would race until 1999. From there came a change. The family auto repair shop continued to sponsor cars, including that of Jason Toll. We found another calling at the racetrack as a parts supplier. There was no place to get parts regularly for the stock car classes. Gary McLeese had some parts, but he was mostly an open wheel guy. So we bought a truck, we bought some parts, and began selling those and tires as well. When the late Fred Brownfield took over as the promoter of the newly renamed Grays Harbor Raceway, he felt there was a need for a regular parts vendor for the stocks at the track, complete with truck and trailer, and as our inductee to fill that role. He accepted and got that trailer and the truck. He got to the track. Before Steve Byler Performance, before Speed Mart and all the others, he was the guy supplying the parts when race teams needed him. Priorities eventually changed when his daughter was born, and he now had a family to take care of, but his interest in racing never went away. Still going to the races to watch, and also hang out and talk about the good old days. He'll still wrench on cars from time to time, as it has not been unusual for there to be as many as 3 race cars inside the family shop being worked on. He never got bored driving in circles. He says he owes a lot to racing, as he learned a lot in life and made a lot of friends along the way. He continues to show support for auto racing in Elma, and has been a regular presence at these Elma Auto Racing Hall of Fame ceremonies, including seeing his father Perry inducted as a member in 2012. Now he gets to join him. Please join me in welcoming to the Elma Auto Racing Hall of Fame, Keith Crowell.
Start out racing, even think about doing something like this. So I was kind of surprised when Rick called me and said, hey, we're going to bring me up. Just kind of a year late because Dad probably would have liked to see us. So I'm here, so I'm going to say some thank yous to people, starting with the Hall of Fame, Rick and everybody. It's amazing what they do. As far as I know, they're not getting paid, so got 2 kids that got scholarships from the program. So that's why I was bidding up stuff.
Me too.
So, it's a real deal. Hardly anybody ever applies for it, so if people would, kids will get some money. So, first, I've got the crew members. One's here, and Doug over there. He was bidding up stuff too.
Thank you.
So, and then just kind of a loss. I got a story I could tell about. I don't know if he's here. Yeah, he's here. He's over there. I don't know if he remembers it. There was one night when we had I believe it was the bomber class and street stock class. And he was running the bombers and running the street stocks. He had won the bomber made and moved up to the street stocks. He come down to me and him on the final lap. We were banging some fenders pretty good. I managed to stay ahead of him coming out of the final turn, and I won. Go over to our pits, sitting there, and out of the corner of my eye, I see this person walking with a crew member. My cousin, he was pitting for me too, and I was talking to him. I said, "Uh-oh, here we go." He says, "What?" I said, "That's J. Cole walking over here." He got closer and he had a big old grin on his face. Reached out, shook my hand, and said, "Boy, that was a blast." That's when I became a J. Cole fan. But I thought for sure we were going to have some. And I have another one to tell about Steve Luellen. Grew up with Steve. We went to the same school. He was a few years ahead of me, but he was flagging that night. And after the races, the flagging didn't go our way. But we usually stopped at it was called the Beacon East at the time in Elma. And we go rolling in there and Steve's in. He thought, "Oh shit, I don't know what we're gonna do." He was worried and coming in there and he was like, looked really nervous, but once he figured out we weren't there to cause trouble, it was a good time. So that's my stories for racing. So that's it. Just thank you for.
Keep getting this jacket on here. All the interviews I've done over the years, interviewing all the inductees on the phone, and one time in person here, them speaking up here, I don't think I've heard one driver's name mentioned more than J. Cole over here. You've been involved in a lot of stuff. I like that picture right there. Our next inductee, he always has an awful lot to say there, and I feel bad here in the middle of this slideshow. The sound system decided to take a dump on us here and cut him off there, but with or without that there, you can listen to this man tell stories for hours. I've done that. I enjoyed it, every minute of it. Back in the day, it was not unusual for him to hold court at his trailer following the races, and people gathered around to listen to everything he had on his mind in that particular evening. Originally from California, his family migrated north to Lebanon, Oregon post-World War II, and he was living on that ranch as a child where he began wearing his trademark cowboy hats, which he continues to do to this day. Family eventually moved to Medford, and it was there he would often go to watch airplanes taking off or landing at the local airport. Landing a job delivering newspapers, he convinced Rosenberg's flying service at the airport to sign up for the Sunday paper, just to give him a chance. Convinced him to sign up for the Sunday paper just to give him the excuse to go to the airport and see the planes. It was in the garage that he saw old hardtops, which caught the youngster's attention. And at age 10, he saw his first races at the Old Medford Raceway, and it was there that he caught the bug. Around 10 years later, after a short stint in the Air Force, our inductee was now living in Washington State and got in a car for the first time. He had found a car that had been smashed up in a powder puff race that was on sale for a then whopping $50, and he negotiated it down to $35. Made $50 right away. After fixing it up, he drove his first race at the old SeaTac track in 1959. He had a partner in the car who would drive the car elsewhere on Saturdays while he would drive Friday nights at SeaTac, but that partner eventually felt he was better at being a crew member, and our inductee was the full-time driver of that car. It wasn't long after, though, that he built his first car. You can say that it was here that Ram race cars began. Building 7 modified Mania for himself, he numbered at 76, and that 76 would be his primary number for virtually his entire racing career. Buying a bundle of tubing in his own fabrication shop and began working on other cars. Because when he visited someone else's shop to do some welding, he saw something that really caught his eye, a sprint car. It looked like it was fun, and he decided he wanted to drive one eventually. Sprint car owners back then were typically older guys, and they would have younger drivers piloting them, and one happened to go to SeaTac one night to scout younger drivers. Our inductee was performing well and caught that man's attention that evening. He was invited to the shop, he was invited to sit in the sprint car, he fit, and he was hired on the spot. It was a roadster converted to a then open cockpit sprint car, and to be the car he drove for a time, at least until a big crash where he got upside down and was lucky to escape. He never kept track of how many wins he had or how many cars he built for that matter, but he does remember first getting a win in an open comp race in Umatilla, Oregon. Later, in 1965, he ran his first race at Skagit Speedway. The car was not built for the dirt there. The car felt okay in hot laps, but coming back in for qualifying, he was at first annoyed when he saw everybody laughing, something he had done poorly, but was then told that his car built for asphalt had just broken the Skagit track record. He also raced in Oregon often, one night setting fast time at an event in Salem, driving a V6 motor against a field of V8s. It was clear he had a knack for accomplishing some things in cars that were built for something different. All this time, he never liked having regular jobs as they interfered with racing. Priorities. He continued traveling around the Northwest, racing on both dirt and asphalt. First running the 5/8 mile asphalt oval at Evergreen Speedway in 1968, doing 130 miles an hour on the straightaways, and won a track title in 1969. And as he said earlier there, he had time to do a little prayer while going down the straightaway. Racing at Skagit, he often found himself starting towards the back of the field because of a rule change at one point, putting points leaders at the back, but he would still occasionally win. He also traveled frequently down to California to race against the best down there, wowing the locals with his bravery on the big Calistoga half mile. He admitted to not being the best, but he worked to do the best he could against the California guys despite their knowledge, equipment, and extra seat time with their longer seasons down south. He made many friends there, including Jimmy Sills. He also got well acquainted with the legendary Jan Opperman, who one night in 1976 jumped into one of his sprint cars at Sky Valley and promptly ran second to Roger Rager, and said that that Ram car was one of his favorites he had ever driven. Hearing that from Opperman is what helped convince Bobby Marshall to drive one of his cars in the Gold Cup in Sacramento later that year, driving to a third place finish after competing for the win, and this after starting 16th in that race. Meanwhile, the new Northwest Dirt Cup had started, then a three-track point series between Skagit, Sky Valley, and Elma. And there were a couple of them that he felt he could have won, if not for a little bad luck. He well remembers one year winning the feature at the Elma half mile, and then lapping the Skagit winner at Sky Valley the next day. Another Dirt Cup saw his car get torn up by a spinning car in hot laps. He bought another car in the pits and ran third in the Dirt Cup main event and paid for the car with his winnings that night. Hope I'm getting this all right because he had a lot to say. Another thing, he never really knew how exactly to set up his cars, and he always just eyeballed it. He didn't have those books or manuals or whatever back in the day. that they have now. But he was respected for his knowledge by the racing community still. He then began selling parts and once traded a race car for the truck to sell them out of. For a time, he stepped back from some driving and focused on building cars and selling parts. One of his cars once won 30 races in a season with John Tharp Sr. behind the wheel. Another big thing came at the end of 1978. Unhappy with the small check he received for winning a feature one night at Skagit, he put on the promoter's hat and called for a meeting for all the sprint car owners in the area. He had put together a schedule including tracks in Oregon and Montana. About 60 people attended that meeting and all signed off on the creation of the Northwest Sprint Cars in 1979. He was wanting there to be a president and director for the new series, but the strong urging of everyone at that meeting, he ended up doing both jobs. For a year, he was the promoter of that series before stepping aside. That first year could be called a success for Northwest Sprint Cars. Sprint Cars generally were not as plentiful elsewhere around the Northwest compared to the semi-modifieds, but the new series that year had at least 12 cars at all but one of their races. Taking a brief job opportunity in Alaska for the 1980 season, he sold his main car to one family, and that family struggled with that car. Came back towards the end of the season and visited their shop, becoming friends with the driver's father. After a couple of days in the shop being looked over and fixed, that car ended up winning the season championship feature at Skagit. The driver's name was Cheryl Glass. That win brought her a lot of attention, opened up a couple of opportunities for her. After some time off focusing on building cars and selling parts, he returned to racing himself and had a spectacular 1983 season aboard his sprint car, winning the Skagit Track Championship, the Northwest Sprint Car title, and the Montana Challenge that was held that year. For many of those years, he was also enjoyed a very long friendship with Ed Williams, whose family owned a Toyota dealership in Tacoma and was a longtime sponsor on his race cars. Ed was also involved with Northwest Sprint Cars. Meanwhile, he continued to build cars in the 1980s. He doesn't remember how many cars he built, but there were 3 different models of cars and a midget, and his last car was purchased by Mr. Rick Leedy. He eventually retired from racing competitively, but for many, many years, raced his old roadsters and sprint cars he had built in vintage races, and he was a regular presence at vintage races on both dirt and asphalt. It was then a big crash that happened at State Line Speedway in Idaho in a bench car that resulted in a lengthy hospital stay and the end of his driving days. To this day, however, he remains attentive to the Northwest racing scene and still goes to the races whenever he can. He shares old photos and stories on Facebook, giving us younger folks a glimpse into the past. And as I was saying, we can go on for hours telling them those stories in person, and you can't help but keep listening. He never had any rivals, he never hated anyone, and no one hated him, and he was proud of that. He just liked driving race cars, building race cars, and helping people out. He even sponsored a push truck once. All that was shared here was just a snapshot of this man's time in the sport of auto racing. He was his time as a successful racer, manufacturer, parts vendor, promoter, old-time supporter, and you could say a historian now. He's earned his place here. Please join me in welcoming to the Elma Auto Racing Hall of Fame, Jerry Day. I hope I got everything right here, but you know, it's a story.
Right out of my mouth. Yeah, I think. Besides, if you noticed earlier, I break equipment when I talk. Break down where it's left. I feel really humble for all the respect for those things. You like me. I don't have any enemies. I don't know. That's kind of racing career has just been something I needed to do. I just did it, and I never had to make a lot of money. That's open race cars. So I got by. And I feel like I have regular jobs. Because you've got so much to come to work at the same time every day. And a lot of creative rules. Plus, hunting season comes, race season comes, all kinds of things to do. Go to some job. I had some really good jobs temporarily. And I made good money. I was a structural carver at the apprenticeship. Went downtown, walked around the crazy skyscraper. I loved that work. That was pretty challenging, like racing sprint car. The nice thing is, if I had a race coming up or I had some cars to build, I just take off. I don't know when the unit comes. I don't know what to do. See you when I get around to it. And when I go down to get a job to move for work again. That's why I pay the bills. Anyway, I'm getting around to it these days. Have to push this stupid walk around or me out. And I guess the old man finally got in. And you heard that song, Keith, about don't let the old man in. I fought it for a long time. I think he snuck in there a while back. Definitely slowed down. So right now I do have a sprint car. I have the car that I built for Jam back in 1976. 50 years. It's back in my shop. And I restored it in 2008, 9, and raced it in 2010. Unfortunately, it was my last forced retirement. But the car would be passed out. Gas down, and maybe 100 miles an hour when I'm off the end of the track of steam line. There's a big bank. Who knows? Nobody can see over there. I know when I woke up 3 days later in the hospital, my friend Hal Street was sitting by me. They jammed this thing down my throat. I tried to pull it out. Watched it. 5 weeks in there. He said, well, I'm going to walk. A lot of things I don't want to be able to do. I couldn't do that. But I couldn't race him. Bad work. So anyway, that's the same car I talked about now that I have again. So I had mixed emotions about that race car. It treated me really good at one race I did. And my ass for that. Quite crappy. I'd be driving the damn thing today if I could do it, but I can't even get one anymore now. So anyway, I love it and I appreciate getting involved in this fair. It's just mind-blowing. I can't believe it. I never was a player down here, but all my cars ran down here and they drove me down here. And I love the half mile. I didn't race very often, but you get raced on. I would turn 5 occasions. 1, 2, or 3, and I finished second place. One was behind Johnny Anderson, Clark, California. He was a champion down there. And they were in California all the time. He was a hand in those headphones. And I was a roadster. And then before Elma, he beat me. Second. And he beat me the other time. Champ sprint car. The name escapes me like that right now. Does that all the time. And then I went on this short new track. So I'm good there. But I sure miss that happening. Well, once we had a race there, it was a gut race. We run all 3 shows. And I was pretty dialed in that day. And I won the race, but I lapped Gary Patterson, and he was running 4th. That shows you how fast we were. I don't know. I couldn't believe myself. I was just hanging around there having fun. So Gary told me, he says, you know what Jerry should do? When these half miles come down in California. I said, yeah, I can do that. So you come on down and I'll teach you the ropes. Racing California. I said, okay. So I went down there. And but later on in the year, and I felt pretty good about it. And time travel was top 8 or 10 cars, so I got a fast heat. I'm leading on the last lap. And I'm getting ready to win this heat race. And then Gary Patterson, damn guy, He put a slide job on me. Nancy was just get ready. What'd you do that for? You've been racing here all the time. Like the one that he raced my first time down here. He said, why did you do that? He said, why did you let me at Elma? I said, because we just shut the run for us. So I passed every car there. Next three. Anyway, yeah, I've had a wonderful career. I got so many friends. I really appreciate it. I feel humbled and all the respect I get. I didn't try to get it. I just try to be nice to people. Love all your race racing. I'm sorry I can't do it anymore. And building cars, I do have that car back there. Getting ready to try to set up another club up to get a arena car. Vinny's Racing is real established in the summer. And I've got one more to sign up today, I think. It got away from being Vinny's anymore because guys are all flying doing more down tubes, so you got to agree. I'm doing that. They're the sprint cars. Down tubes, 410. I'm going to cost $1 million. I'm working on that now. It'll be a while to get this talk show put together on this thing that broke down.
Sorry, Jerry.
Anyway, thank you all. It's a real honor.
Congratulations, Jerry. And here to get the jacket here from Mr. Lady and the jacket. Eventually, as he got older, watching was not enough. Around 1982, when he was 17 years old, he got his first race car. One of the semi-modifieds that were prevalent at Elma around the Northwest at the time. By the time the late 80s came, the semi-modifieds at Elma had transitioned to sprint cars. By his own admission, he can't remember his first win, as it was a while back. As happens to many racers, priorities changed a little when kids came into the picture. He took some time off to focus on raising his new family. His interest in racing, however, didn't go away, and it was only a few years later that he got back into a car. The motor rules at the then Elma National Raceway were changing as the local sprint car class was transitioning to modern 360 sprint cars. But through future Elma promoter and Hall of Famer Bert Johnson, he learned of the Washington Econo Sprint Car Organization. Wesco once sanctioned the sportsman sprint class at Skagit Speedway, but they had become a traveling group, running both dirt and asphalt tracks in Washington and Oregon. He found success running with the group, often battling with Johnson, but winning several races on both surfaces, including at Elma. He eventually won back-to-back Wesco titles in 1996 and 1997. He eventually got the 360 sprint car and returned to regular racing at what's now called the Grays Harbor Raceway. And while he had no real rivalries, he always enjoyed racing with future Hall of Famer J. Cole, and good friends with him. I told you J. Cole gets mentioned a lot. He continued racing the 3/10 mile through its final season in 2003, getting one last victory at the time also before the track's reconfiguration to the current 3/8 mile and massive facility upgrades prior to the 2004 season. Unfortunately, he never got to race on the new track here as a freak accident while on vacation in Hawaii left him with a broken neck and his racing days were over. His involvement didn't end right away though, as for a number of seasons he served as crew chief for the sprint car fielded by another future Elma Hall of Famer, Vern Rangan. Another fellow Elma Hall of Famer, Randy Van Acton, drove the car and won a track championship at Grays Harbor Raceway. Van Acton later stepped away from the car, but another racer would pilot the car for a couple of years, some young kid from Quilcene named J.J. Hickle. He eventually stepped away from crew chiefing and racing altogether. By his own admission, he feels he might be a horrible spectator, so he hasn't been to a race in around 15 years, though J. Cole had made more than one attempt to get back to the racetrack to at least hang out. He He has had many good memories, and any night racing was a good night, at least as long as he didn't wreck the car. He decided to make a clean break though. Racing is family, he says, but it's also life-consuming. He misses racing, but doesn't want to miss it too much as he worries a trip to the racetrack may result in a race car suddenly appearing in the garage at home. That all said, all he did in accomplishing his time at the track and in Elma, you'll never forget and you will not ignore. At least we're getting him here tonight so we can honor him. Please join me in welcoming to the Elma Auto Racing Hall of Fame our final inductee this evening, Steve Walker.
You know, when Andrew called me, asked me for some info and stuff, I kind of felt like a politician. I just kept saying, you know, I do not recall. When I got the call from Rick, I was totally surprised, totally honored. And it just reminded me of all the years I spent racing and being on the, sitting in the old stands at the half mile, watching my dad and my uncle. And, you know, I got to watch a lot of really great people. You know, Glenn Walker, Rich Leedy, you know, the names go on, Rick Greaves. And I was fortunate enough when I came up that I got to race against some of those guys later on. And, but I raced with a lot of really good guys around here. And I'm going to make this short. I just got some people I want to thank. When I first started out in that old modified, it was just, you know, me, my dad, my mom, my brother, Chris, and my friend Keith Berry and Steve Parker, who actually gave me that first chassis that turned into the first car. And, you know, we ran through the mid-'80s with that car until we went to a sprint car. And it was just, I've got a lot of good memories of racing. It's been such a long time since I've even been to a track. I haven't been there, you know, 15, 16 years. And I've spent the last month just thinking about racing more than I have in the last 17 years, 16 years. And I just don't want to let myself miss it because it was such a great experience. And I want to thank my wife Shannon and both my boys Luellen and Dylan. You know, they're always my biggest fan and my biggest supporters. Later on, I had some other guys that I want to thank: Eddie Kramer, Rick, Count LaBelle, Matt June, Tim Lockwood, Dean Wood, Jim Walker, Casey Walker, Kevin Wessel, Terry Vance, my Uncle Wayne, who I just lost about 2 months ago, Tim Faust, John Dickinson, Bruce Waters, Phil Schmidt, and Vern Ringen. You know, they were all, that last 10 years was with that last group of guys, and I appreciate all of it. Thank you.
Congratulations to Mr. Walker.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll try to make this so you can hear me. My voice doesn't always carry that well, but we have 3 very special awards to us, and awards that mean a lot. 3 of these we've been given every year since we started this group in 2009, and one is a little bit newer award, but they all recognize somebody that has just given so much to auto racing. Maybe not always just here in Elma, but throughout the country, actually, in a lot of cases. And our very first award that we gave in 2009 was named after one of the original racers that formed the Evergreen Stock Car Association that ran on a track that was up in Clemens Hill in Central Park for a couple of years, and then they moved down to the fairgrounds, I think in their 3rd year of existence. And was Larry Spoon, and we have an award named for him, the Larry Spoon Distinguished Service Award. And we're very proud to present that tonight to a person who served in so many different capacities. From the time he was old enough to be out in the pits, actually even before he was old enough to be out in the pits, he was helping people in their garages. And I think this would have meant a great deal to him, because I know he was very close to the Spoon family. And at this time, we'd like to award the Larry Spoon Distinguished Service Award for 2026 to Steve Luellen. I'm going to move to this guy, just so he doesn't have to come all the way back here. Our next award is named after Fred Brownfield, the promoter that actually put Grays Harbor Raceway into national attention, and was tragically lost his life in a modified nationals race. He was hit while he was officiating. So we have the Fred Brownfield Exemplary Contribution Award, and we couldn't think of anybody better to give it to this year than the man that I'm standing in front of here right now. He did so much for racing throughout the Northwest. He's known nationwide, much like Fred was, and very fitting that we're presenting the Fred Brownfield Exemplary Contribution Award to Jerry Day. That's okay.
Good job, Jerry.
Thank you all, it's crazy. I didn't even get along with Freddie. He got me upside down 3 times in 1 year. Double deal, all kinds of races, way out. Hell, that day, that's my group.
Okay, our final award doesn't necessarily go to an inductee each year, but this year it's going to the business of an inductee. The first program that we found from 1957, the first group down here in Grays Harbor. This program had an ad in it for a company that sponsored the racers, had cars, race themselves, and right through, at one point, they had the parts truck at the track, providing racers with much needed parts. So we'd like to present the Exemplary Service Award, the Elma Auto Racing Hall of Fame Exemplary Service Award to Crowell Brothers. Keith, would you- When you stop and think about it, sponsoring the first group, the first years of racing down here, and what's gone on through all the years, it's just outstanding. They're still in business and still supporting racing, supporting us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Rick. Congrats to all of our award winners and all of our inductees this evening. Again, thank you everyone for your patience this evening. How about a round of applause for our board member from the Elma Racing Hall of Fame?